It's me.
Marquis D.
Today on the Shove It Show, I'm still recovering from that time it took to make that Terry Funk video, so we've got to do a bit of a shorter one today to get me back on track. The hawk doesn't slack. I've had a quick search on YouTube and I couldn't see anyone have made this video, so I thought it'd be a good one. So here it is, 10 WCW records that might surprise you, and if they don't, I'll poke out your eyeball. Number 10, the most matches on NITRO. NITRO was WCW's flagship show during the Monday Night Wars. They had lots of other shows, but this is the most famous one. The man who has the honour of competing in the most NITRO matches was Booker T. Booker started out straight away in 1993 teaming with his brother as the team of Harlem Heat. They were Cole and Kane and they were meant to come out in shackles as slaves, but thankfully that part of the gimmick was dropped. As Harlem Heat, they won the WCW tag title 10 times, which in itself is a record. They held the tag belts a combined 470 days, which is not a record, but is still very good. They did eventually end up breaking up, with Booker able to break out as a single star. He was very successful and won the WCW TV title 6 times, and of course he also became the 5-time WCW Heavyweight Champion. He ended up racking up 157 NITRO matches alone. Surprisingly, the man who came second on this list is Lex Luger with 150. I'm not sure if Luger always gets the credit he deserved. Number 9, WCW's highest attendance. This was 41,412 and it took place in July 6th, 1998, in the middle of the Monday Night Wars. This was after WCW's 83-week winning streak, but this was one of the rare nights WCW would best roar again after the 83-week winning streak. This show's coming at you from the Georgia Dome, which is sadly no more. It was pulled down in 2017 and replaced with the ugliest new stadium I've ever seen. I mean seriously, look at this thing. It's named the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and that's appropriate, because it looks like a lump of mangled metal all crushed together. Whoever designed this thing needs to be smacked one. What is it with the US and not preserving history? I'm against that. Anyway, back to the show. It wasn't even a pay-per-view and it wasn't even a special Nitro. Fans who attended this were treated to Johnny Swinger vs Chavo Guerrero and Scotty Riggs vs Pirate Scott Putski. You have to wonder if all those fans were somehow kidnapped and trapped in the stadium. This show was heavily centred around Bill Goldberg, who was still on the original winning streak. He had to beat Scott Hall for a shot at Hogan's title later in the night. The match against Scott Hall was bad and Goldberg looked nervous, but he eventually beat Hall. Goldberg went on to face Hogan and he actually beat him cleanly to become the new WCW Heavyweight Champion, so it's a happy show for the hometown hero. And for all you guys out there who seriously need a punch to the gut, yes, I know WCW ran a joint show in North Korea. It doesn't count, alright? Most of those fans were forced to attend. The fans at the Georgia Dome were not officially reported missing that night, so I guess they went on their own accord. Number 8, most televised wins. Congratulations to the Stinger Steve Borden, you win a punch to the gut and a bird dance. A combination of time spent in WCW and adapting his character over time meant Sting was nearly always treated well in the company. Sting ended up recording 399 televised wins on company television. The first coming all the way back in 1988 as he teamed with Luger to defeat the team of David, Isley and Larry Stevens. I don't know who the hell they are. They ain't from Shepton Mallet, I can tell you that much. And the final televised win, of course, was on the final episode of Nitro as he beat Ric Flair. And if you really need to know, Rick Steiner finished in second place with 345 televised wins. There's no need to grin. 7. Most televised losses. This one surprised me as the biggest losers were not necessarily the people you think they were. WCW had some amazing jobber names over the years like Rip Rogers, Roadblock and Hard Work Bobby Walker, but none of them wrestled on TV consistently enough to win this accolade. So instead, I have to congratulate Bobby Eaton, although I'm not sure if congratulate is the right word for this scenario. Now, just because Eaton is at the top of this list, it doesn't necessarily make him a jobber. This was more of a case of Eaton wrestling for such a long time for WCW that he qualified. From back in the 80s up to just before they went out of business, he was with them. He was pretty much there for 15 years, minus some short breaks. He mostly wrestled in tag teams, being most famous for his time in the Midnight Express. As the years went on, he developed a bit of a reputation as a tag team specialist. Unfortunately, with each new tag team started, his push declined. He ended up wrestling on WCWC shows and training wrestlers at the power plant. Perhaps a victim of wrestling moving into sports entertainment. The second biggest loser was Buff Bagwell with 200 televised losses. He probably wouldn't admit that one though. 6. The longest world title reign. This one probably won't shock any of you. It belongs to the Hawk, and it probably is the most obvious jab to the jaw on this list. He captured his first WCW World title straight after joining WCW at Bash at the Beach 94. The Hawk would hold the title for a record-setting 469 days. Considering the amount of short reigns for the title in the year 2000, it's a miracle he made it this far. But if anyone could do it, the Hawk sure can. During his reign, he defended against mainly just Ric Flair and Vader. It was during this time that the Goody Two-Shoes routine became too much for the fans, and you could hear the boos in the audience. WCW paid attention and the rest was history. Number 5, the lowest rated episode of Nitro. This one comes at you from the 27th of April 1998. Strange that this very month and year would come up twice on this list for record breaking. Now this one isn't exactly WCW's fault, believe it or not. It's not on the list for sucking, it's on it because it was only 1 hour long and it was forced to play the rest of the show the following night because of an NBA basketball game. One of the only people in the entire wrestling business outside the WWE who was happy with this was Billy Corgan, as he was selected to be the match ball. This Nitro wasn't live either, and no one cares about shows that aren't live. This isn't long after Nitro started losing again after the 83-week winning streak, so I think we can all place the blame of the death of WCW at the feet of NBA. This show got a 1.7, which many companies would kill for nowadays. Number 4, highest paid. Of course, yet again, it's the one and only Hawk. Hogan had a number of tasty looking clauses in his contract that ensured that he was well paid during his time in WCW. Hogan was paid $20,000 a month just for wearing NWO shirts. He also got first class flights and accommodation chucked into his contract. 50% profits from any Hogan merchandise sold, 25 grand just for appearing on a Nitro, or 25% of the original profits of the gates, whichever figure was greater. Can you imagine being paid 25 grand just for bothering to turn up at work? He also got around $500,000 for wrestling on each pay-per-view. And finally, most importantly, he got creative control on his 4-year contract. He pocketed around $5 million in 1999 alone, which is around $8.5 million if you adjust for inflation. I think we can certainly call this contract record-breaking. Number 3, the record for the most wins over Hulk Hogan in WCW. Yeah, I thought I'd give this one its own section, because as you can tell, it's a pretty big deal if you can beat him. This record also belongs to the Stinger, Steve Borden. He certainly seemed to have Hogan's number. Hogan's a guy who didn't exactly lose very often. In fact, during his time in WCW, he only lost around 17 singles matches. Actually, I'm surprised it was as many as that. I think it was the manner of the defeats people care about. It was often screwy. During Hogan's time with WCW, Sting proved to be super effective against him. And now, Shove It Squad, it's time for a brand new segment, because I just love segments. It's Taz's Factoid of the Week.
I got a factoid for both you guys. I got a boil on my ass.
In fact, Shove It Squad, the duo had 9 matches with Sting winning 4 and Hogan never winning any. There were 5 without a proper finish. So shove it. He even beat him again in 2011 TNA, so maybe Hogan is willing to do the job if you're the right person. Number 2, longest title reign including all the titles. This one belongs to Lex Luger, who impressively held the WCW US title for 523 days from the 22nd of May 89 to the October 22nd, 1990. This was a clear second belt at the time in WCW, but after dropping it to Stan Hansen, he moved into the world title scene. With Flair leaving and taking the belt, Luger became the world champion, although this didn't go as well as WCW would have hoped. And number 1 to round off the list, the heaviest WCW wrestler of all time. No, it's not The Big Show, it's not Elegante, it's not Chris Harris. This one has to go to English wrestler Giant Haystacks. Giant Haystacks was very famous over in the UK for his feud with Big Daddy, but at the end of the 80s the wrestling boom seemed to have died off in the UK.
So the equalising fall, but Big Daddy on McManus.
Haystacks was now in his 50s and is one of the most bizarre hirings in WCW history in this Hawk's opinion. WCW took him in 1996. He was well past his best. He called himself Loch Ness even though he wasn't even from Scotland. He was just shoved with the Dungeon of Doom, a villainous faction full of weirdos who were obsessed with destroying Hulkamania. Haystacks was never exactly mobile in the ring, but he was completely worthless at this point and weighed in at just under £700. A real spectacle to see though. It shocked me to learn that he wrestled 7 TV matches in WCW. Most people just nerve his pay-per-view match against the Big Show. Haystacks got a cancer diagnosis and passed away just 2 years after this. So that's the list. If you didn't learn anything, don't be pissed. And if you are aware of any interesting WCW records, shove it in the comments section. Don't keep it to yourself or I'll beat you into bad health.